My name's Susan Capes. I'm Assistant Curator at Hull Museums. Madame Clapham is revered as one of Hull's most talented and creative fashion designers. Between 1887 and the mid-20th century, she created stunning designs for high society ladies. She was a very elegant woman who always dressed immaculately in navy or black and wore lavender scent which followed her around the salons. She had blue eyes, a rosy complexion and blonde hair which she always piled on top of her head. She was also something of a perfectionist who demanded the utmost commitment and high standards from her workforce. She was known to be strict and severe with her employees, yet she also developed a sense of pride and prestige in her workforce and provided hundreds of local women and girls with highly skilled employment. So what was it like to work for Madame Clapham? At its height between 1890 and 1914, the salon employed around 150 girls and women who either worked behind the scenes as dressmakers or models in the showrooms. The dressmakers followed a strict and disciplined regime. They undertook a long apprenticeship of 7 years and they were discouraged from talking in the workrooms. They worked at long tables in sparse and cold rooms. They began work at 8:30 in the morning and normally finished at 6 in the evening, although those who worked on Queen Maud of Norway's dresses were expected to work until 9:30 at night. Madame Clapham was so proud of her connection with Queen Maud that she adorned her windows with reference to this connection. Even decades later, the letterhead paper which she used for her business correspondence featured the words, "By appointment to the late Queen Maud of Norway." Apprentices were trained to specialise in one particular skill, be it tailoring, embroidery, bodices or skirts. This maximised their expertise in one particular area and was probably seen as the best way of achieving a high quality product. These skills can all be seen in this particular dress that we have here. It belonged to Caroline Jamison of East Ella Hall. This was a substantial property on the corner of Anlaby Road and Calvert Lane in Hull. Caroline wore the dress to her son's wedding at All Saints Church in Hessel in 1891. It consists of an embroidered ivory silk bodice and skirt and a tailored green velvet jacket and full-length train. Each dressmaking process was extremely complex and most of the work was done by hand. Embroidery, for example, was created by placing a pattern onto tissue paper and then stitching the design through the tissue paper onto the fabric. The worker then had the task of picking each piece of tissue paper from under the threads. The work was painstaking, the working conditions were basic and the pay was poor. Yet Madame Clapham's seamstresses were incredibly dedicated. They took great pride in creating dresses for high society ladies. Girls in the skirt room would sew a strand of their hair into the hemline of a skirt to bring the wearer good luck. One employee even trooped through floodwater and sat all day in her wet clothes to finish the embroidery on a client's dress. In comparison, the shop was decked with elaborate showrooms that were intended to tempt Madame Clapham's clients and persuade them to buy her creations. The models who worked in the shop were selected for their good manners and slim figure. They were the ones who came into contact with clients, so they had to be well-groomed, graceful and polite. Their responsibility was to model the gowns, attend to the shop displays and pack the garments. You can see some of the packing here. This box was addressed to Mrs. A. Atkinson at Ellerton Hill in 1891. It contained a veil for her wedding dress. This carrier dates from a much later period, as can be seen by the inclusion of a telephone number. It actually postdates Madame Clapham's death. Although Madame Clapham's name features prominently on the bag, it also makes reference to E. Wall. This was Emily Wall, who was Madame Clapham's niece and previously worked at the salon. She took on the business after Madame Clapham died in her mid-90s in 1952. She was known as a kind and caring employer, but the salon had been in decline already during Madame Clapham's final years. Emily had to scale down the business and it finally closed in 1967. It had operated successfully for 80 years and is fondly remembered by those not only who worked there, but also by their friends and family. Madame Clapham put Hull firmly at the forefront of the fashion industry, and her legacy can be seen in the stunning dresses that we hold in the collections at Hull Museums. We have a small selection of items from the Madame Clapham collection on display at the Hands-On History Museum in Hull's Trinity Square. You can come and see these each second or fourth Saturday of the month between 12 noon and 4 p.m. You can also see many more of her creations at our collections website at www.hullcc.gov.uk/museum collections.